I'm Elizabeth with Hamilton Native Outpost, and the goldenrods of fall are blooming. And I often get the question of, is it time to plant my native seeds? There's an old saying, and it's really quite false as far as the native plants are concerned, but it's, if you can't plant in fall, don't plant at all. And it has to do with like introduced cool season grasses. It tends to be a really good time to plant some of those. But from the native plant standpoint, I think I would change it up to something like, if you plant in fall, you'll lose it all. Because it's really not a great time to plant natives, with a few exceptions. So let's explore why it's not a good time to plant natives, and then let's explore a few of those exceptions. Temperatures have moderated. It's not the hot, sultry summer temperatures anymore. The rains, we're getting a few rains here in the fall. And so it looks like seedlings would have a good chance. Like if I want to plant stuff in my garden, it's a great time to get out and get stuff planted because it still has enough temperature to get some growth on. But for the native plants, we run into two problems. One is many of them have a dormancy in the seed. And so basically it's Mother Nature's way of making sure that if the seed falls on the ground in the middle of summer, say, that seed doesn't germinate with the fall temperatures. It's basically a safety mechanism. And so this dormancy in the seed means that it needs to go through a cold, moist period before it will germinate. Cold, moist, that sounds like winter, because you've got the moisture of winter, you've got good moisture in the soil usually, and you've got the cold temperatures. That will break the dormancy of the seed. If we get our seed, take our sack of seed out here and start scattering, there is no cold temperatures. Maybe it's moist in the soil if you just got a rain, or if you're going to get one tomorrow or something. Then maybe you have the moisture, but you don't have the coldness to break that dormancy. So there's no point in letting the seed sit out here longer than it needs to. But the second problem we run into is, suppose not all of the seeds have a high amount of dormancy in them. And so there's variation between species, and there's also variation within a species. Some of the seeds will have more dormancy than the next seed of the same kind. Suppose it did germinate and there wasn't dormancy in that particular seed. Your seedling would get ever so big. They're a perennial plant, so they're in it for the long haul. They don't make fast growth spurts. So your seedling gets ever so big. It's not big enough to make it through winter. It doesn't have enough root reserves built up. It needs a growing season to get started, get its first leaves up, and then build that root system underground to come back from that next year. So the danger of planting right now, the biggest danger, is really that if the seedlings do germinate, they're not big enough to make it through winter. So you say, when is a better time to plant? And is there anything I can plant in this fall time frame? Well, a better time to plant in general, just in generalities, is during the dormant season. Some species don't require the cold moist stratification, that cold period of winter, but it's not going to hurt anything to plant it there during the winter. Some things you can also plant up in the spring. And we actually have another video that you can watch on what is the best time to plant my native seeds. But then what are the few exceptions? I've been alluding to that throughout this video. What are the few exceptions of things that can be planted? And it's not like we know everything that can be fall planted, but in our experience, we have a pretty short list of things that can be fall planted, and that would include the wild rye. It would include the coreopsises, both plains and tick seed. Coreopsis do fine fall planted, and common black-eyed Susan. So all of these plants would do fine, planting them once that summer temperature is dropping off and you're starting to see rains in the forecast, but not waiting too late, because again, they do have to get enough growth on them to actually make it through winter. So, this kind of September-ish time frame here in my neck of the woods is a good time to be planting those. So there are some you can be successful with, but as a whole, unless you're just doing a stand of wild rye for some reason or something like that, planting during that winter time frame or the spring, so it just kind of, again, depends on what you're planting as to when you do it, is a much better option as a whole. I'm Elizabeth with Hamilton Native Outpost, and we are really passionate about native plants like this goldenrod. Love to share with you how to do it well, and are so glad that you've joined us today for this video.